Behind the code, the frameworks, and the breakthroughs
are stories of triumph, failure,
resilience, and growth.
This is the developer's journey.
With your hosts, Ronald Dolph
and Olivia McVicker.
If you can be an expert in your own IDE, expert at these AI tools, you're going to be way ahead of the game.
Matt Pocock is a TypeScript educator and engineer and author of Total TypeScript.
The way that you get promoted inside your company is to be really vocal and shout about your achievements. You're often not going to be given a pay rise inside your own company. You're going to be able to get more money elsewhere.
Well, hello, Matt. Thanks so much for joining us. Developer relations. The first question that I wanted to ask is how do you even find out what DevRel was, developer relations? And then with all that's going on in AI, what's your honest opinion? Maybe three things that engineers should do for job security.
Well, let's talk about DevRel first. So I was working at an agency, which was, I think, my second job. And we were using a tool set that was built by a guy called Max Stoiber. Max Stoiber is really influential in the React world. He built style components along with a couple of other collaborators. And he had this entire boilerplate of called React Boilerplate, which had a bunch of stuff all sort of tooled up together. And I saw him speaking, and he was younger than me at this point, because I entered dev at I must have been 26 when 28 when I started writing my first line of code professionally. So I sort of felt right, I've got to catch up here. And seeing Max do his thing, actually talking in front of people, and people like Dan Abramov, and I had in my head the three Sarahs as well, Sarah Swaden, Sarah Vieira, and Sarah Drasner, all doing amazing stuff. And I thought, okay, these people are doing this, and I was starting to enter the Twitter sphere at that point and discovering all these wonderful people doing this stuff and talking about it. Now, with the AI stuff, that's like a swerve. The AI stuff, can we come on to that a bit later? Is that all right? Because I feel like once we go through the whole journey and the AI stuff has really come at the end of my journey in terms of and it's honestly changing everything again. And it honestly feels like my entire career has sort of felt a bit quaint and blessed, and now AI is come along and kind of just smashing everything. Really, it's kind of nuts.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Let's talk about that later. There's one thing that you just said that kind of stuck out to me, where you said, you felt like you had to catch up. So when you kind of felt oh, I really need to catch up, it kind of sounds like maybe you're dealing with a little bit of imposter syndrome there. What did you do to, I guess, one, deal with that, cope with that? And what advice do you have for people who are getting into tech who may not come from a traditional tech background?
Yeah, I'd actually dealt with this for years because I didn't do a music degree. I'd done a drama degree. And so I was a singing teacher. I actually taught my first singing lesson without ever having taken a singing lesson myself, if you believe that. That's unbelievable. Yeah. I just sort of I got some advice off a guitar teacher friend and I sort of just kind of busked my way through it. And I got really interested in it, and I felt like I was doing a really good job, and people were very happy and all that stuff. And so even then, when I was about 21, 22, I was thinking, gosh, I need to catch up. I need to really read as much as I can, get as much information as I can. And then when I would meet up with singing teacher friends or people I'd met at, gatherings and stuff, I would sort of ask them about these detailed questions, and they had no idea what I was talking about, because I just sort of taught my way myself into a different level, even than the people I was talking to. And so when I went into dev, it just felt okay, it's just this same process all over again, right? Everywhere you go, you have this idea that there are going to be magical supernatural beings there who hold all the information, who know everything, who are absolutely incredible at what they do, who are unattainably good because they had a different background to you. And there's no way you can catch up because you haven't had their experiences, you haven't gone through their training. And it turns out these are just normal people going to the toilet, coming back to their desks, slacking off sometimes, checking Twitter. They're just normal people, and they have all the same flaws as you, and probably a bunch of other weird ones too. And so whenever I've gone somewhere in my career, I've always thought, having had that experience with those singing teachers and the same experience in dev, by the way, like, it doesn't matter what room you walk into, there's always going to be people who like are about on your level at different, like we're such complex, weird beings. We're all good at some things, we're all bad at others. And it all kind of evens out no matter what experience you've had. So I've never found really anyone in my career who I would describe as like actually having looked at them close, like a god, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
I've never found anyone, you know, and I've been to like quite a few like important places, including Microsoft Build, you know, they're all like terrible people there, obviously. So that's my mindset, and that has been my mindset for many, many years, really.
I love that mindset, and I think it's so important to have, and I've seen that too, where people kind of give this, like, otherworldly status to people just because they are a voice, especially in DevRel too. Like, is it weird to you because you're saying all this and, like, I think you probably know this, but a lot of people probably think that about you right now, Matt. Like,
Yeah.
that you're the TypeScript guy, like, you're the person who they put on this pedestal. Like, what do you have to say with that kind of being almost on the other side of that?
Yeah, it's like I'm inside the staff room, basically,
Mhm.
looking out at all the kids, you know, and they have this elevated idea of me saying, this is the TypeScript guy, we should look at him and respect him. I think it's very easy to see what you perceive as like someone's output and think, God, this person is so productive, for instance, this person is so incredible. But then if you were to actually work with me, you would see that I have lots of weird flaws, you know, like I spend ages to respond to messages, and, you know, I take random breaks, and, you know, I like, you know, all sorts of stuff that would probably annoy you a lot about actually working with me. So you can develop these parasocial relationships with people who you admire, but that doesn't reflect reality whatsoever. And there's oh God, I think it's a Michel de Montaigne quote, which is just like etched in my brain, which is, all the people on all the thrones in all the world are all seated upon their asses, right? Like, doesn't matter how high you are up, we're all just the same people, all with the same bodily functions and weaknesses. I've murdered that quote, but I'll look it up and send it to you guys so you have the accurate
I love
version.
that. That's great.
Never assume that your manager knows what you're working on or how impactful it is. You have to be your own advocate, because there's going to be things you might do that might not be recognized. That means having updates, summarizing accomplishments, and highlighting the value that you've delivered. It's not bragging, it's communicating. Visibility is key to recognition, promotions, and growth. This is your story, so tell it. Like, one of the fantastic things about like what you do is because people see like your work, you know, in public, that gives you like the status. But for those that are not in front of the camera, what do you think about certifications? Do you feel like, how much do you feel like that really matters in the industry for those that aren't really showing their work in public and they're coming in for interviews?
Yeah, all I can say is about, like, my working experience was in startups and agencies that primarily service small companies, basically. So I never worked in like enterprise, really. I never worked in big companies like Microsoft. And I think in my experience, and I think my experience reflects most devs' experience, to be honest. I think most devs are working in small companies. With my experience, and I imagine that actually the same is true in enterprise, you need to be really vocal in terms of self-promotion, right? The only way that you're ever going to actually, the way that you get, let's say, promoted inside your company is to be really vocal and shout about your achievements, right? Like, you know, post on Slack, yeah, I did this, you know, in whatever channel, to get people to celebrate it and actually have an impact. And when you focused on that, you're more focused on, because really, people hire devs and DevRels in order to achieve business objectives, right? If you're doing things that are directly tied to business objectives and you're shouting about them in the context of, this is what I've done for the company, then instead of like, oh, I've just done this cool thing, look how cool I am, then people are going to dig that, you know? And often it's not about, let's say, even contextualizing your work to your company and making your bosses appreciate you, because often you're going to be able to, and this was certainly my experience, is that you're often not going to be given a pay rise inside your own company. You're going to be able to get more money elsewhere, right? And so I jumped pretty quickly from job to job. I think I was in my first job for 5 months, but that wasn't my fault. The company kind of slightly went under and I got a bit scared, and so I jumped to a new job. Then the next one was like 9 months, next one was a year, next one was a year. I was at Vercel for 3 months, and then I quit to do total TypeScript. So doing that and going through that process basically taught me that like there's always a bigger fish out there. There's going to be something else. And if you're able to shout about your achievements to your work and understand what you've done, then you're going to be really good at doing it in an interview for a different place, you know. But certifications, I mean, it's a way of shouting about your achievements in a way. It's another way of doing something which is going to benefit the business. But if you're just doing the certifications to do them instead of learning them to be able to like deliver better value for customers or stuff for stakeholders, all that stuff. Like, I've never really taken any certifications in my career. I've never really felt the need to. But then again, I have had this slightly weird journey where I've never worked in enterprise and just gone straight into content creation. So yeah, I'm agnostic about them. I could see them being useful in a place where you need to sort of artificially gin up some like achievement juice, I suppose.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's interesting you're kind of talking about how you try different roles roughly every year. Could you talk a little bit more about maybe just what challenges that you faced going from role to role, just that people can learn from your experience?
So this was a few years ago now. So I've been doing this content creation thing for about 3 years, and that's been fun. The challenges I faced, I suppose, were assessing what people most needed in that job. So what the company was pushing for, and honestly, some of the jobs I took were, I found that the code was the issue. So in one job in particular, we had this really nasty repo setup where all the code was spread out over like 12 different repos. And I could see immediately that consolidating that into one big code base was going to be massively influential. And so that's what I sort of found as the thing I wanted to push on, right? Like, in every job I was in, there was always some slightly political fight, some sort of like code-based fight that I was in. I don't know whether that's just my personality, whether I wanted to just push and push and push until I got my way, you know, but like there was always something I felt could be improved. In the job before that, it was adopting GraphQL instead of REST. I don't know whether I was correct about that one, but I felt like I was correct at the time, so that's what matters. Because I had this communication background, I was able to talk about things, and I felt like I understood what I was trying to do, at least, and the reasons for it. I was able to get a lot of that stuff done and really talk to people and try to convince people about technical arguments. So then when I found that because I was a decent communicator, that really helped when I was moving job to job, because I could get myself into conversations where I could understand the business at a deep level. I was put in front of customers a lot as well, just as the guy who's can talk to humans, you know, which is relatively rare in a dev space. And so that meant that I could align myself with what the company wanted easier. And I suppose I was open to that and sensitive to that. Hopefully that makes sense as an answer.
So it sounded like because you had that talent to be a great communicator in terms of finding jobs that really helped you and didn't struggle too much there. So do you feel that, I'm sure you've had those, some people that probably did struggle to find work. Do you find that that might have been a major reason because of their lack of communication skills, or maybe it was just like the skill sets themselves?
Yeah, I had a really tough time when I was interviewing as a junior dev, of course, because I had no experience. I had 6 years experience as a singing teacher. So I had some really nightmare interviews. But as soon as I had a bit of experience, then I'm trying to remember if I ever failed an interview, actually, genuinely. Like it was genuinely felt like talking was just a superpower, you know what I mean, in this space. It really, really was. And being able to sound convincing and talk about technical things in a very detailed and confident way, and an empathetic way as well, where I could, you know, because this is something I used to teach as well, like you've got to like really imagine what the person is saying or what they're thinking, and like try to answer the question that they're really asking instead of the one that they're sort of asking. And all of that just felt like an absolute superpower. So while I was a good dev, I think I was a really good interviewer, really good at getting jobs. And this served me extremely well. And And then, of course, served me very, very well when I went into DevRel as well, of course, because that's just all communication and just a little bit of dev. That would be my advice. But of course, it's hard working on that because you just need to do a lot of it. And because I had this super weird background where I'd done a ton of it and taught other people how to speak well, then I was just ready to go. But so I don't know what my advice is there. Really, do a drama degree? Like, that's not right. That can't be right. But I suppose try to value that stuff more highly than you do because it really is a superpower when you get very good at it.
Yeah, I think that's a great call out because a lot of times people overlook those soft skills and they're impactful in so many ways, like just from interview process to your actual day-to-day job. Like you were saying, being able to convince people to go a certain route, like all of that is hugely important
Yeah, it's
throughout
not a
your career.
soft skill, it's a superpower. I mean, all those soft skills, like they are so much more useful than you think they are. Like
Mhm.
with the dev stuff, you can pick it up from colleagues and stuff. You can work your way through it, but no one's going to be able to teach you how to speak well in front of a room. Like none of your colleagues can teach you that stuff. I mean, I have to say, I have a few colleagues who I learned a lot of soft skills from actually. So like from a guy called Willow Reagan, who's my one of my best bosses ever. Learned how to like protect people working under me and like sit in long meetings and have the stamina to actually pay attention and all that stuff. So that's not quite right. You can definitely learn that stuff from colleagues, but communication stuff is hard to pick up. Like you need to really
And you put in the
practice and
work.
got to
Mhm.
put in the work. Absolutely.
It's one of those things
Mhm.
we don't really talk about enough because, like, literally, even if you don't have the best idea, like, the worst ideas could win in a discussion just because the communicator was really good at communicating. Ultimately, I do think it's one of those things that if you're conscious of it and you try to practice, I definitely, like, try to practice because 'cause I've seen people that are just way better communicators than me, and so I try to little by little, practice, but yeah, so you are right. Soft skill almost sounds like a pejorative, like, it's like, "Soft skill," but because
Yeah.
it's so important, it seems like that's not the right word to describe it, so I get it. What do you think is a common misconception about working in tech, and how do you discover the truth?
I think I'll go back to what I said earlier, which is that the people in tech are just gods, that they're not mortal. Like I think that is the one that like I think imposter syndrome is like healthy in a way. Not if it, makes you feel anxious or inhibits you in any way, but it's a healthy impulse to want to improve yourself and want to get better. And I found that impulse very important in the early part of both of my careers. Even the big CEOs, they're just people standing around, feeling awkward sometimes, and they just happen to be doing slightly different jobs from you. So I'll stick to that one.
Well, so you mentioned AI. I was wondering if we could circle back to the first AI question related to that. If you were to come up with like three things that engineers should do in terms of like job security in this world of AI now, like what
Yeah.
things come to mind?
So my advice would be to just get really, really, really used to these tools, whether that's VS Code Agent Mode, whether that's GitHub Copilot coding agents, or whatever clunky name it's called. Um, and be better at that than your colleagues. Because if you're the one teaching your colleagues about this stuff, not to blow my own trumpet, but you want to be the AI hero at your company, basically. My course is called AI Hero. That's coming out. And you do, because you want to be the person that people ask about this stuff. If you can be an expert in your own IDE, an expert at these AI tools, that doesn't mean paying attention to every new model that comes out. That just means doing a lot of this work and essentially making yourself the expert in it at your company. You're going to be way ahead of the game, and you're going to be the one kept on if other people are fired. You're going to be the one who's able to get the jobs ahead of everyone else because you'll know all of this stuff. And eventually, job interviews will catch up and they'll be asking people about this stuff as well. Like, instead of expert interview questions, it will be expert interview questions about AI and about all that. I think just get really good at it, because the faster you can do that, the faster you can outcompete everyone else.
So yeah, you talked a lot about, how this is just a tool that devs should really accept and just get really good at. What tips do you have for devs to embrace these tools and just get better and better at them?
Yeah, so AI has found a couple of form factors where it really, really works. The first one, obviously, being chat, right? So literally just chatting to AI, chatting to and getting answers based on its training data. Then there's you can connect AI up into search stuff, right? So you can get the AI to search for information and compile it into some sort of report. This is called deep search or deep research. And that's really, really useful when you want to, let's say you're looking to find a new library to solve a specific problem, then deep research is a great way to do it because it will compile lots and lots of sources. If you're looking at a really complex technical problem, you go away, you ask Google Gemini, let's say, deep research, bam, give me back a really detailed thing, and it will give you back a great report. And the cool thing about those reports is you can then just feed those reports into an AI and ask it questions about the reports, Like the way AI works is, and I like to think of it, is just as kind of flows of information. You can, if you imagine the whole web as just like a lake that you can dip into, then deep research can just sort of scan the lake for fish that you want to catch. I'm not going to go for this metaphor for very long. So deep research is kind of like your big wide scanner. Then you take that information down and you pull it into, let's say, a chatbot that can take that information and just sort of like iterate on it with you. You can actually create code within the chatbot, and then you can move into the IDE. And the agents that you have in the IDE, like just literally it being able to edit files and scan your code base, all that stuff, is just super powerful too. I'm not sure how I feel about MCP at the moment. MCP is it's called the Model Context Protocol. It allows you to basically, it's like the USB of AI, essentially. It lets you plug in something to your IDE, and with the other end, you plug it into an external service. Basically, like I've got it so I can manage my to-dos with it and my Google Calendar or something. And it works okay. It's not perfect. I feel like you can avoid MCP for for maybe 3 or 4 more months, actually, I suppose. I was going to say like 2 years, but no, that's not right in AI world. But thinking about it in terms of what am I doing right now in my job that could potentially be automated away for me? Whether that's researching something, whether that's literally editing these files, I could just tell an AI to do that. And I'd also dive into the idea that we often conflate AI assisted coding with vibe coding, right? Vibe coding is this term. It's been around since February 22nd of February, not very long, from Andrej Karpathy, who basically said, I've been really enjoying this type of thing that's really cool for toy projects where I just don't look at the code, I just tell the AI to do the thing. And everyone took that and thought, right, this is the future of big application development. No, it isn't. What I like to think of, and the way that I'm working with AI personally, is AI-assisted development, which is where I'm taking this stuff I get from deep research, I'm plugging that into a markdown file. I'm basically telling the AI, okay, turn this into an implementation plan based on my code base, putting that in another markdown file, and then taking that implementation plan, putting it into context inside the LLM, inside the IDE, and saying, okay, do step 1, do step 2, do step 3, and just watching it walk through. And this has been extremely good for very, very complex things in very complex applications. So that's what I'm really digging. And I think there's just so much value to be gotten out of these tools if you start working with them more often and you start thinking about this flow of information from the internet through deep research into your local machine, where you can then play with it, turn it into instructions for the AI, and get code out of it.
In the age of AI and vibe coding, job security can be a concern. But really, it isn't just about building projects fast. It's about the value that you bring to the table that AI can't replace. Can you solve real problems when vibe coding falls short? Can you understand the code that AI generates? Definitely learn to leverage tools like GitHub Copilot, but don't forget, your moat is the ability to articulate how code works, fix bugs, and add to the code when AI can't. Be the developer who understands, not just vibes. You need to kind of be this person in the middle who's like, yes, AI, it's not just a hype, it's gonna change the way that we work. And so you need to embrace it. But on the other hand, like you're saying, get comfortable with it, dive deep into it. There's a whole area under the surface of it than just vibe coding.
Totally. I thought it was going to be like another Web 3, Web 4, Web 5, Web billion, whatever. I thought it was another crypto bubble that was going to burst. And then I was actually encouraged to look more into it by a few, you know, a few folks I work with. And I realized, oh, okay, this is based on decades of research. This is actually just maths, basically. And yeah, like, sure, it got super hyped up in 2022, 23, whenever ChatGPT came out. But actually, yeah, it is getting better and better and better. It is actually solving real world problems. And when you use it, you just can't deny it, really. Like it is. And there's other issues with it, of course. Like there's kind of ethical considerations. Like there's how it affects artists and art that sort of like need to be naturally protected. But in terms of coding, in terms of just pure output, it can't be denied. So yeah, I would say to the skeptics, just give it a go, man. Like see what's there because it is unbelievably good already, and it's only getting better.
Matt, in your journey as a engineer and as an educator, what would you say is your most challenging day in your career or period? And how do you get over it? And then what was the best?
I saw this question on the doc. I've been sort of dreading it because there is definitely a story of the worst day in my career, which is it's the worst bug that I ever created. I was working for a company. This was actually on my first job, so about 4 months into my first job. I was working for a company that provided basically provided medical data essentially, and it was not kind of like really crucial medical data. It was about sort of just movement data within rooms, right? So people were using these little devices to track their elderly relatives, to basically sort of keep them at home for longer, just to make sure, like, still give them a bit of privacy. It wasn't like cameras or anything, just literally like movement trackers. Can we see this person? You know, often if they're going to the bathroom quite a lot, it might mean they have a UTI or something. They can just use that data. And so I shipped an improvement to the charts. I changed our charting library from like D3 or from something to a more modern alternative, which was at the time D3. And in doing that, I also changed the way that the API was fetched. I changed the amount of data that we were getting. And I forgot to think about the difference between UTC and normal time zones, because I was only been doing it about 3 or 4 months. So what this meant was in the chart, between the hours of 12 and 1 p.m., there was no data coming through. And I happened to sit very close to the people who took the calls, like the support calls. And it turned out that overnight, the night I shipped this change, someone got really extremely worried about their elderly relative because there was no data for that time. So literally a front-end issue caused someone a whole world of panic just for about an hour overnight. And they actually, went over to their parents' house and and just that. So I knew then, and I got told the next day this is what happened. I was the only front-end developer on this tiny little team. And so I just thought, oh my God, right, I'm playing with live ammo here, right? Like this is real stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And so ever since then, really, I've tried to be as careful as I possibly can be, as detail-oriented as I possibly can be, because that was a real moment for me of just like, oh my God, what have I done here? This is just madness.
Mhm.
Just from something that I didn't even know was an issue. I didn't really know what UTC was, or I could not even think that was a possibility. So that was, I think, I screwed up many, many times like that, but I never had quite as bad a consequence as that for the rest of my career, actually. So from the worst day to the best day, I suppose, is the moment that David called me and said, yeah, we're making a company out of Stately, because this was, I felt, wow, I'm able to work on something which is going to be put in front of devs. It's going to be a product for devs. I love devs by that point because I had been a dev for about 5 years by then.
Mhm.
And I just thought, wow, I'm going to be able to build things for other developers, for other nerds like me. This is just going to be wonderful. And that's true. And that's a feeling that I carried on for the rest of my career to the present day. I love working with and for nerds, basically, just like me. I love talking shop. I love all of that stuff. And so, yeah, this job really matters in a lot of ways, especially when you're working with people who depend on you. I mean, I love working for devs as well because at this point they trust what I'm saying to them, so I need to make sure that what I'm saying is absolutely accurate and absolutely correct. And yeah, that was the worst and best day of my career, I suppose.
Thank you for sharing though. But I think, even from the worst day, you can tell that that had an impact on you, and you took it with you and you learned from it. And I also think it's a good reminder as devs. A lot of times, you're just behind your screen and you forget that the tech you are creating is real. It is impacting people's lives. So always a good reminder there. But I love going then to your best day and just hearing how it really just emphasized how much you love this community and your passion, and it's really great to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love you guys. It's great fun working for you and talking about this thing that we all love really, and or well, love is all feel strongly about, let's say, which is development. Yeah.
Yes, thanks, Matt. This has been wonderful, and I appreciate the you sharing your journey with our audience, folks. That's it for this episode. In the future, if there's other questions you want us to ask our guests, please go ahead and put that in the comments. That is it, and we will see you in the next episode.